How to feel more in control around certain foods. Now, this is often really complex and there are a lot of pieces to the puzzle, but what I'm about to share with you now is a really important piece of the puzzle. For those of us who try to neglect doing this or try to leave this out, we often end up struggling for a really long time, and trust me, that was me. I tried to skip this step, I tried to not do this, I tried to find ways around it, and ended up struggling with binge eating for like 15 years. So one of the most important things to start doing if you want to feel more in control around certain foods is to eat these foods before you crave them. If we only eat certain foods during binges, or if we wait until we're just like gagging for it to eat certain foods, then yeah, these foods are going to be really, really tough. And I know there are a lot of concerns around eating these foods, but one helpful question to ask is it better to eat these foods a little bit more often before we crave them in quantities that are, more manageable, or is it better to wait until we're just like driving ourselves mad and desperate for it and then eating like vast quantities that result in us feeling ill, sick, sometimes for days? I completely understand that a lot of us have concerns around certain foods, especially if it pertains to our body weight and shape. But if the outcome of trying to avoid these foods really aggressively is that we end up binge eating, then we need to just take a beat with that strategy and ask, how well is this working out? Two of the most important things that come out of eating these foods before we crave them. Firstly, we get to connect with the actual experience of eating the food separate from the forbidden fruit effect. So often when we're trying not to eat certain foods and then we eat them, we're so caught up around the emotional experience of eating the food and that forbidden fruit theory that we get distracted from the actual physical experience that we get from eating that food. Our perception of that food and how it makes us feel gets kind of warped because we're too wrapped up in the emotional significance and the emotional experience, more so than connecting with how that food actually makes us feel. And secondly, when we give ourselves permission to eat these foods more regularly, as basic as it sounds, as simple as it sounds, we get reps in. We get practice. Something that restrictive diets rob us of is the opportunity to practice getting good at eating certain foods. And when I say getting good at eating certain foods, I mean being able to eat an amount of certain highly palatable food that we enjoy without going so far as to feel sick or to trigger some kind of emotional response. Super restrictive diets that stop us from eating these foods before we crave them rob us of the opportunity to practice emotional fitness surrounding these foods. One actionable tip that I want to give you to use while experimenting with this and while rolling this out is to do your best to include these foods as part of balanced meals. At first, it's going to be much easier to start including these foods and getting practice eating them as part of balanced meals than if we wait until we're hungry or we have them in isolation. There are so many different ways to do this and it's really personal. So if that doesn't work for you, if you've got something else that works better for you, then please, by all means, do that. But I found it really helpful when reintegrating these foods in my own life and getting confident eating happier amounts of them to include them as part of balanced meals. Also, if we're including these foods with balanced meals, it means that if we get the kind of urge to keep eating and to keep going and to make a binge out of it, if we know that we're going to have another opportunity to eat these foods at our next meal, it becomes much easier to say, you know what, it's okay, I'm cool, I can stop now, I'm legitimately going to have another opportunity to eat this at my next meal. And before I forget, if you want to hear more about the path out of binge eating, make sure you're getting my emails. I usually send out an email a week and they're full of tips and stories and tricks that might not appear on the YouTube channel or on Instagram or on the podcast. So make sure you're getting those emails by following the link in the episode description. But when it comes to feeling more in control around certain foods, it's complicated and there are a lot of pieces to this puzzle. There are physiological factors, there are emotional factors, there are psychological factors. But this is one really important piece that's pretty straightforward. If we wait until we're craving these foods, it's going to be really hard to feel in control while eating them. So have a think about this one. Reach out to me with any questions by visiting strongnot starving.com, and I'll see you in the next video.